G'day everyone and welcome back for another video. Now in this episode I'm going to be covering a trip I did last year with a couple of my good mates. Now I was the only one who had never been to this area before, but neither of the other guys had a fully functional boat. So we loaded up MAYEHM, hooked it up to Mark's ute, and we picked Corey up along the way and made the few-hour trek north to what turned out to be some really epic diving. Now the reef fish, to be honest, were a little slow for this trip, but we did manage to find some nice ones, and there were more mackerel than you could poke a stick at. So stick around and hopefully you enjoy it as much as I did. We hope to do a fair bit of coastal diving this trip, and with the first spot showing a good few meters of viz, we decided to start by trying for a couple of Spanish mackerel. We did this by doing some longer drifts over the area with a few throw flashes. First drop here, I probably landed a little too far from the structure, although mackerel are known to move around a lot, so I just decided to hang on the sand for a bit. Corey took the next dive and was able to secure the first Spanish for the trip. When he hit the top, he said there was a few there, so I took a dive to see if any hung around. After that fish, we drifted onto some shallower stuff that wasn't too promising, so we reset for another go. First dive for this drift, I follow down the throw flasher and it is absolutely loaded with mackerel. This guy is actually a grey mackerel, a smaller relative of the Spanish. I find them equally as tasty, and with a boat limit of only 2 Spanish at the time, they're a good addition to the esky. Next drift, I'm following down the throw flasher for my first dive, and I notice a bull shark in the distance. He seems calm and I can see a couple of Spanish, so I decided to stick to the dive. The first one comes in close and I could get an easy shot, but I could see a larger one in the back and decided I'd aim for that.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure on the shot that I had, but with that shark sticking around, I had no option but to give the fish some stick, and unfortunately, it pulled off. That same drift, one of the other lads managed to nail another nice Spanish mackerel, which made up our boat limit of 2 fish. Now, in Queensland, the rules have since changed to a boat limit of 4 fish, but it's still only 1 per person. So 2 people, 2 fish, 3 people, 3 fish, and 4 or more people, you can keep 4. But with our boat limit filled for that trip, it was time to move on and look for some reef fish. Now, the next spot we went to was quite similar country with plenty of boulders and nice ledges and things. But this time we focused more on diving the structure and looking for those reefies rather than drifting along for the mackerel. First dive on the new spot. Viz wasn't perfect, but still plenty good enough, and there seemed to be a bit more bait hanging around, so the hopes were up. Couple dives on here and I noticed this grassy sweetlip on my way down. Now these guys are super tasty and they can be quite flighty, so I line up and I take my shot. Big one, eh? We continued on a bit without seeing too much when Mark said he had seen a promising show on the sounder, so he towed me over and I took a drop. Coming down, I landed on this large gold spot cod, and underneath him I noticed a couple of nice tuskies. They were pretty flighty and darted off, but I find that these guys often come back for another look if you can stay on the bottom long enough. However, this was a relatively deep dive for me and I couldn't quite wait them out. This area looked super promising, so I did have another couple dives here, but unfortunately all the better fish had already left. After a few more dives, not seeing any more fish, we made the call to make a short move to another spot. Now, this spot was pretty much the same as the last, although it had a little bit more visibility and there was some bigger schools of bait around. First dive here, and I noticed there was a bit more reef life about. I was seeing a bunch of small blue bar parrot and a few little tuskies, as well as a fair bit of bait. I spent a few dives hanging around these rocks hoping for a bigger tusky, but on most dives I was met with mostly pelagic stuff. As much as I wanted some more colour in the esky, it is hard to complain when you're seeing fish like these. I was slowly making my way shallower each dive, and I still wasn't really seeing any of the tuskies I wanted, but I noticed there were a few better sized parrot getting around. Once I made it up pretty shallow, I was satisfied that I wasn't going to find my tusky and decided to take one of these parrot. By this stage, it was early afternoon and the conditions were starting to glass out and we really didn't have a lot of reef fish in the esky. So we made the call to punch it out to the reef. Now, with limited time, there wasn't that many areas we could go, but we gave it a shot and still managed to find some really nice fish. First drift here, we were met by a Spanish mackerel once again, but this particular part of the reef had a bunch of life, so we knew the trout wouldn't be far behind. Second dive here and I find myself that nice coral trout. In proper trout fashion, he comes up for a look, so I line up my shot. I find a few more on this dive, and with that horrible miss on the last one, I hesitate a bit at first, nearly costing me a shot at these fish. Luckily, curiosity got the better of one of these guys, and I did manage to get a shot away.
The bar cheek with this was smaller than it. I saw 2 commons in a bar cheek, and this was the bigger of the commons. So.
I boated for a bit after that one while the lads picked up a couple more trout, but before we headed off I jumped in for one last drift. On my last dive, this little tusky came straight in on me. He was smaller than I'd usually take, but after chasing one all day, I wasn't about to turn him down.
By this stage, we were running out of sunlight and we had planned to camp up on the beach for that night, so we decided to make the call. We'd run in and set up our camp before we were out of sunlight. Now, the following morning, we didn't have a whole lot of time considering we had to drive back home, but we did manage to get another dive in on one of those inshore reefs.
We saw a few mackerel on the sounder while suiting up, so I grabbed a throw flasher in the hopes of a few more greys, and I was not disappointed. By this stage we had each shot a couple mackerel, so we didn't care to take any more, but it's always epic to swim with schools like these. We had a few more drifts on the deeper edges looking for some reef fish. It was pretty quiet, much like the day before, but eventually we did find a couple of tuskies floating about. We were getting into our last drifts here, and with a fair feed in the esky already, I decided to let these guys swim.
If you've made it this far, cheers for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Now, I've also got a bunch of footage from some pretty cool adventures I've done over the last few months, so hopefully I can clip some of that up to share with you guys soon.